Hey there, people. It's Zach at Feel Free to Argue. And I guess I'm doing another eulogy. Lost another friend today. I don't know. I guess it's kind of pretentious for me to call him a friend. He always felt like one to me. Which is odd to say that of somebody who's actually quite famous. But he did have a real intimate quality. And talking about Studs Terkel, somebody who I admire terribly. You know, I'm a pretty cynical guy, and I've been disillusioned by enough people that I used to admire that now I just have kind of a healthy dose of cynicism for people, even people I tend to admire a decent amount. And it's very rare that I have a sort of pretty much unquestioning love and respect of someone. I mean, usually that's reserved for people that I know personally in my life. And a very few people aside from that. I mean, in public life, you know, you probably guessed that I feel that way about Amy Goodman, Jeremy Scahill. There are a few others that I respect and like that, and Studs Terkel's one of them. My favorite book by him is this one, and it follows the pattern of a lot of his books, in that I think if Studs Terkel, I mean, if you don't know anything about Studs Terkel, I guess that's the place to start. For those of you who don't know anything about Studs Terkel, he's probably one of the greatest interviewers this country has ever seen, in the sense that he can take anything, anyone, and find the meaning and value in their life. And probably the most famous book that he did was one called Working. And he basically just interviewed people doing, you know, all kinds of jobs, from like, you know, high-powered executives to, you know, prostitutes to waitresses to garbage men, basically anybody. I mean, and his idea was to get a real sense for what it means to do these jobs, and to really kind of bring them to life. Because, I mean, it's really, you don't really get a sense of what other people's jobs are like. I mean, most of the things that come into our lives are made by somebody, but we have no connection with the person who made that, or even people who take care of us in stores where we physically see those people. We have no idea what their real lives are like. And he was somebody who really kind of brought that to the fore. And I love the way that he wrote about these sort of things. Like, let me read you a bit from the introduction here of his book on race. Diane Romano, a mother of 5, reflected on black depredations and her low opinion of most. Maybe it's not really me saying this. I don't want to be that type of person. It makes me less a good human being. A good human being is rational, sensible, and kind. Maybe layers and layers of prejudice has finally got to me, she sighs. I have such a mixed bag of feelings. I'm always fighting myself. One part of my brain sees all these things as fighting the other, which is my deep, deep down feeling. A young school teacher who had encounters with black schoolmates at college and black parents at her job says, though I was brought up not to be prejudiced, I hate to admit that I am. I don't like my thoughts and feelings. It's not a Christian feeling. A case in extremis. A small-time collector for the syndicate casually refers to shines, spades, jigs, loads of coal. When asked whether he considered himself a racist, he is indignant. Hell no! Did you hear me say nigger? Never! The young construction worker, after offering a litany of grievances, especially in the matter of affirmative action, assures me that the stereotypes of African Americans are true. I've seen them. They live low lives, don't like to work, let their homes run down. Quickly adds, oh, the black guys I work with are okay. He speaks of his black friend, whom he'd defend against all comers. Racism is a word that disturbs him. Like Oscar Wilde's forbidden love, it dare not speak its name. And Terkel was a great one for that, for bringing things out, for bringing things into the national dialogue, talking about things that we don't like to talk about. I mean, working, I thought, was interesting at the time. It was considered very revolutionary that someone would even bother to talk to people like, who were in the, the sex trade or anything like that. I mean, it was a very revolutionary idea. But he's always been doing that. He's always been trying to find things and forcing us to talk about. I mean, when his wife died, he took that as an occasion to talk about the thing we're perhaps most uncomfortable talking about. He did a whole one of these type of books, doing lots of interviews, all people's ideas about death and dying. So, and I just wanted to also relate a little story that I actually saw him once, and I was hoping that he would hang out later and I would get to shake his hand or something. It was at a local progressive function where we could meet a whole bunch of people, and he was actually at the last minute. I mean, I would have done it for him alone, but actually I had heard that Al Franken was going to be there. This was before he even started running, a couple years ago. And so Studs Terkel gets announced late. I'm very excited about that. And then the day comes, and there are a whole bunch of people doing different speeches. And finally, it's Studs' turn. And he has actually he's had a lot of trouble getting around for the last few years. And but it was funny because I was in a position where I could see him in the wings of the stage, and them working him, and there were like 2 or 3 people with him there trying to help him and his walker to the edge of the stage. And he got to the edge of the stage and he immediately kind of put the walker aside and he hobbled out. And it literally took him about 3 minutes to get to the podium, waddling in this kind of slow, very painful sort of way. But then he got to the microphone, and I don't know if anybody's ever seen him. I mean, sure, there are YouTube videos about Studs Terkel. There's got to be people who took videos of him because he's such a charming guy. But anyway, he does this whole story, and this was when we were talking about a lot of the stories were first coming out about the Iraq War, and he told this one story which I'll never forget, where he said, "While I was watching a lot of this early news coverage of the Iraq War, and I kept hearing about all of these embedded journalists, and that everybody was talking about the embedded journalists. And I'm old and my ears don't work so well, and they kept saying embedded journalists, and all I kept hearing was in bed with journalists." Which is, of course, a very accurate way of putting it. And it was interesting, too, because they had a little remembrance of him on Democracy Now! Again today. And they asked him, what he wanted people to associate with his name. And when people hear Studs Terkel, what does he want people to think of? And he said, well, I want them to think that here's a person who gave them hope. And I guess that it probably did give a lot of people hope. Just in the sense that they were getting their story told. I mean, that's a form of hope. At least you were heard, you were remembered. But I thought that I just wanted to read one last little part from his introduction. I say I'm running out of time. And this kind of, I think, is apropos given what we're going into, this election. Black man running against a white man. Maybe the black guy will win. Who knows? But here it is from Studs Terkel. Lloyd King, who closes the book, envisions a somewhat more secular trip. "I have faith we can mature. Stranger things have happened. Maybe America, maybe the world is in its adolescence. Maybe we're driving home from the prom drunk and nobody knows whether we're going to survive or not. I'm guardedly optimistic. Definitely guardedly. If everything is going to hell, it would be hard for me to get up in the morning. But I can't honestly say, sure, things will get better. We might not make it home from the prom."